I also want to welcome those of you watching online from wherever you might be. Thanks for tuning in as well. And before we get into series and topic for today and all that sort of stuff, I do just want to address some of the new restrictions that our governor has put in order in our state. If you're watching this from out of the state of Minnesota, look it up yourself somewhere. But this past, I think it was Tuesday, Governor Walz issued some new restrictions for the state of Minnesota to help kind of curb this COVID outbreak that's happening. And I want you to know that you probably know this already, but I just want to encourage you. None of those restrictions, none of the new restrictions that he had affect our gatherings at all, either our large service gatherings or small groups or anything like that. Those are not private meetings. Those fall under the religion and houses of worship sort of thing. So at least for right now, nothing is changing in our church. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But I say all that to really make one point. For everybody here in person, and especially for those of you online, meeting together in person is essential. I am telling you, meeting together in person is essential. It is as essential as groceries. It is as essential as going to our jobs, maybe even more essential than those things. And here's the thing. I think for years, Christians and churches have been guilty of downplaying the importance of meeting together face to face, of you and I building relationships with one another. And I think what's happened is we've lost sight of this being together and how beneficial it is, not only for us, but for other people and for the mission. And I think when we don't meet together, I think there is a tendency for us to drift in our relationship with God. I think we unknowingly harm our own spiritual well-being. I just think there's something that God does in and through us when we meet together face to face. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to do it the way we've always done. That doesn't mean that we have to do it as often as we've always done. Platforms like YouTube you're watching right now, or Zoom meetings, all that sort of stuff is wonderful technology that we can use to our advantage and to our benefit. But it doesn't replace the value of meeting in person. You and I as human beings were not created to isolate. For short times, we can endure a lot, but long term, we were not meant to isolate. We were not meant to do quarantine long term. If there's health issues, obviously all of that makes sense, and we can take precautions and be careful and limit group sizes. But I don't think any of us were meant to go long term in total isolation. So I say all that to say, those of you that are here, man, thank you for being here. You are doing an incredible benefit for your own growth and for the growth of others. If you're watching online, I just want to encourage you, when you can, come to a service. When you can, stay involved. Get involved in a small group. Again, we can take precautions and we can be careful, but there's something important and incredible almost that happens when we gather with other people. And so I say all that to say, meeting in person is essential, and don't overlook it in your own lives, in your own relationship with God. So, anyway, we are on a series called Stress Less. This is the third week of the series. If you've missed the previous 2 weeks, I encourage you to go back and watch them online. And I don't have to tell you how relevant this series is to all of our lives. We are all facing more stress than ever before, both individually, in our family, in our city, in our culture. I mean, our stress levels are through the roof, and we need to figure out a way to get them under control. And so throughout this series, we've kind of been using a line from the book of Proverbs as like a launching point each week. And it's found in Psalm 119. It says this: as pressure and stress bear down on me, I will find joy in your commands. As the pressure and stress of life wears down on us, we're going to look to God as our source of hope, as our source of joy, as our source to be able to give us the information and the inspiration to overcome the pressure and stress that we're all facing. That's kind of our launching point each week. Now, today we're going to do something a little bit different. We have not done this in quite a while, but we're going to actually watch a message from another pastor. His name is Andy Stanley. He is the lead pastor of North Point Community Church down in Atlanta, Georgia. They got several different sites and partner churches all over the world. And this message is a little bit dated. It's from 2012. You'll notice by the fact he's wearing a suit coat that doesn't fit him. It's a little dated. And rather than just, take 49% of his information and try and use it in my message and persuade you it's mine, I just thought what we do is let's just watch the whole thing. Let's watch his message. And I first heard this message back when he gave it back in 2012. And it's one of those messages for me that has stuck with me ever since. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a life-changing message, but it's one of those memorable ones that has benefited me so much personally. He has a little phrase in this message that he unpacks over the course that I have used in trying to encourage and talk with other people. I mean, it's the way he says it and the angle he takes is so good and so impactful. And I just thought, you know what? This is perfect for what we're talking about in this series. Now, he is in a completely different series. His series he's starting off has nothing to do with stress. It's called The Comparison Trap. But I think what he's talking about is still just as applicable for the stress that a lot of us face in our everyday lives. And so when he references things in Atlanta or references things from 2012 or the series, just kind of look past all that. And I simply want to encourage you to do this. Listen to what he says. Because I believe what he is teaching us is helping us see things from God's perspective. And I believe if we can understand where he's coming from, you and I will be able to stress less in this particular area of our life. So it's about 37 minutes, and I'll be back up at the end, but hope you enjoy.
And the way this came about is I've noticed this thing in my life, and when you notice something in your life and you start working on it or looking for ways to deal with it, I thought, at my age, I should be over this. I should be over my inclination to look to my left, look to my right, see what everybody else is doing, and compare myself and measure myself and determine who I am and how well I'm doing and if I'm okay based on what everybody else is doing. I mean, it's just kind of sick. And so I just started just saying, God, do I ever get over this? And so then I began talking about it with some other people, and I realized I'm not the only one. So, let's see if I can explain this. As I began to compare my tendency to compare myself to other people's tendency to compare themselves to other people, I felt better about myself in comparison, which is the problem. So anyway, I decided, if everybody else is struggling with this, or if this is a common thing, we should talk about it. And I don't think I can get over my problem in 1 week. And the longer I talk about something, the more I learn. So we're going to talk about this for 3 weeks. Now, I think it began with me where it began with most of you in school. For me, I don't remember elementary school or middle school because I blanked those out, but I do remember high school. And I remember in high school, I wasn't athletic, so I hated athletes, and I wasn't smart, so I hated smart people, and I wasn't cool, so I hated cool people. So I was in a pretty small group. It was pretty much me, okay? And it wasn't that there was anything wrong with athletes, smart people, or cool people. It's just that it was easier to hate them than to look in the mirror and say, Andy, you'll never be athletic, you'll never be smart, and you'll never be cool. And I was in a very large high school, which I kept using as an excuse. Well, look how big this place is. There's no way I'll ever measure up. But that was just my defense mechanism because my natural inclination was to measure my value to the school based on what everybody else was doing. I bet you have your own story. I think that's why middle school is completely, blanked out for me. Then I had a break, and I've told some of you a little bit about this. I had a break when I was in the 11th grade. I discovered that my ability to play the piano and play by ear and listen to a song and be able to play it and sing it, that was a cool thing in the 11th grade. So during lunch, I would eat my lunch quick or skip it, and I would go up on the stage in our cafeteria at Tucker High School, and I would play Elton John songs and just popular songs on the radio, and I could sing them, and girls liked that. Oh, it was awesome. And so people would come up on the stage and they'd all get around the piano and they'd throw out a song, and I could play just well enough. I could play just about anything. And all of a sudden I was somebody, and I would wear my Elton John t-shirt that I got at the Omni when I saw him in high school, snuck out and went to that concert. You remember the Omni? Let me tell you how you know you're old. You're old when you can remember them building an arena and you were around when they tore it down. And you're like, wait a minute, they just built that, didn't they? And like, no, they didn't just build that. I'm like, what are they tearing it down? They just got that thing up. Anyway, so I wear my Elton John t-shirt and play Elton John songs and Billy Joel songs, and I was really cool. And so I sort of had my moment, but it was all about comparison because I was like the best and nobody else can do this. I'm the only one up here. And then a very well-meaning adult said, Andy, God has given you this musical ability. You should use it. I'm like, all right. And he said, when you go to college, you should major in music. I thought, well, that's a great idea. I'm sure Georgia State will just be thrilled to see me rolling in there to, share my musical ability with the people at Georgia State because, the best at Tucker High School, I'm sure, they're just waiting on me. And so I went to Georgia State University, found out they had a jazz band. I thought, well, I should try out to be a pianist in the jazz band as a freshman. And you know how we all have these memories that are sort of etched in our minds, like the whole world slows down. Even though it was years ago, you can still feel what you felt. This is one of those memories, going down to the music department, walking down the hall, and I can remember I heard him before I saw him. And I'm walking down the hall, and I'm hearing the most amazing, complex piano playing that I'd ever heard live in my life. And I thought, what in the heck is that? And I go around the corner, and here sits this kid surrounded by people around a baby grand piano, and he's just killing it. And back then, he didn't really kill it. That was whatever. I don't even remember what we said back then. But I remember standing in the doorway. I didn't even want to get close. I'm like, that's like from some other planet. This guy was so good. And I turned to the person by the door. I said, is that like a professor here? I said, he like a teacher, I'm hoping. No, he's auditioning for the jazz band. And I'm like, great. So I decided I'm not majoring in music. I can't do that. So I hated him. I hated the whole department. So anyway, now, some of you are way more mature than that. You don't hate the people you compete with. But we live in a world. It's not even just the world we live in. I think it's the way we're designed. We're always looking to our left and our right, trying to figure out, how am I doing? And am I acceptable? Am I measuring up? And basically, we all want a bigger added to all the adjectives that describe us. In fact, the name of this message is the land of And this is where we all live. In other words, let me kind of flesh it out for you. We want to be richer. We want to be skinnier. We want to be smarter, taller, prettier, happier, hipper, talented, right? I just want more I want more than you, because if I have more than you, then I feel better about me, and I like you and everything. I just like to go away from lunch or go away from coffee or go home at night going, no, they're good, but I'm okay? I'm whatever they are plus some And then it's even worse, okay? Because then you start dating, and then you want your boyfriend or your girlfriend to have some right? I want him to be richer, her to be skinnier, him to be handsomer, and it's all about that. Then you get married, and you want lots of with your spouse, and the problem there is we lie to ourselves, and I'm hoping that in these 3 weeks together, if we don't do anything else, we'll quit lying to ourselves about this. We tell ourselves, well, I just want my husband or I just want my wife to reach their full potential. So we start in them. Like, you need to get a little here, a little there, a little less there, and it's really not even about them. It's about what people think about me. It's about what people think about you. And then you have kids. And then you see where everybody else's kids are going to school. And you hear about what everybody else's kids are reading and how advanced they are. And they skipped a grade and they're playing up in sports. And then you start comparing your kids and you start your kids. And again, it's not even about your kids. And you're like, well, I want my kids to reach their full potential. No, you're comparing your kids to other kids. And it's really, you're comparing yourself to your other people. You're comparing your parenting skills to other parents. And you love it. I mean, you won't admit this. You love it when when your friends' kids mess up, don't you? You love it when they get in trouble. You love it when they don't get a scholarship. You love it when they don't get into the school of your choice. Now, you can't say that because you're Christians. You go, oh, I'm so sorry. What is that? I mean, that's just evil, isn't it? I mean, that's embarrassing. That really is evil. If you don't think there's sin in the world, just pay attention to the conversations you have with yourself, or, your feelings of elation when something bad happens to someone you care about. What is that? It's because we live in the land of We just all want to, and then there's the other side of it. There's the people who we really do have a little more than them, and we look at them because, they're a little heavier, and, they're a little slower, and their son's a little slower, and I notice your daughter's a little shorter, and, they're a little poorer, and he's a little nerdier, and, I'm nerdy, but he's nerdier, and so I feel and then we have another problem. We start feeling superior, and we know we shouldn't feel that either. And so you look to the left and people are better. You look to the right, people aren't as good. You're somewhere in the middle. And either way you look, it's really just gross. And I don't have to tell you what a bad habit that is. I don't have to tell you that it doesn't take you any place, that there's really no win in all of that. But there we are. And that's just kind of how we go. Then, to keep this going, there's another group of us, sort of a subcategory. We're not happy with at all. We want est. okay? I don't want to be richer. I want to be richest. I want to be smartest. I want to be happiest. I want to be healthiest. I want to be retweetedest, okay? I want to be in a category all by myself so that when people compare themselves to me, it's like, whoa, now I'm not saying this is me. I'm just saying I've met people like this, okay? And maybe there's a slice of you and some part of you that you're all about this. And again, you lie to yourself. You lie to yourself. You say, well, I'm just reaching my full potential. I'm just going to do my best. And as we're going to see, there's a place for all of that. But there may be a thread of this other illness in you that is I know it's in me, where I'm constantly measuring myself by people around me, trying to determine, am I okay? Now, you may be way, way, way further down the road than me, and you may be way healthier than me, and maybe a minute ago when I said I hated athletes and I hated, you're like, oh, don't be a hater, you shouldn't hate, and I applaud you if you've never felt like somebody was better than you and you didn't hate them, but maybe you're on the other side of this, because you look in the mirror and you realize, you know what? It's not his fault that he's richer than me, and it's not her fault that she's prettier than me, and it's not their fault that their kids are smarter than mine. It's not really their fault. You look in the mirror and you hate you. You just don't like you. And you've gone beyond, not liking other people, but when you look in the mirror, and the reason you don't like you is because you will never be as, fill in the blank, as them. You just know you'll never measure up. You may never be that happy. You may never be that happily married. You may never have that kind of financial margin. You may never look like that, live like that, drive like that. Your kids probably aren't ever going to go to those kinds of schools. And you look in the mirror and you just, what do you do? What do you do? So the bottom line, if you don't get anything else out of the series, if you fall asleep in the next 30 seconds, and if you don't come back or you lose your electricity at home or whatever, here's what I don't want you to forget. In fact, if we all just took this one simple idea, it comes from Scripture, as we'll see in a minute, but if you took this one simple idea and you just put it somewhere on a card in a drawer on your mirror, and every time you began veering to see, oh, how am I doing compared to them, and how am I doing? If this one thought would help reset our thinking in terms of this whole conversation or this whole topic, this could be a game changer, and it's simply this. There's no win in comparison. There's no win in comparison. There's no win. There's no finish line. There's no final sense of satisfaction. There's no win. If you're better than people, that doesn't help you. If you're not measuring up to people, that doesn't help you. The whole thing, there's no win in comparison. In fact, it's really dangerous. Some of you, if you're real honest, you have debt, you have financial debt because of this thing. You have purchased things, driving things, living in things, wearing things, you've eaten things, vacationed with things, you've done things, and the only reason you did it is because you saw what other people are doing. And now you have debt because of it. It's so dangerous. Some of you, you're driving your spouse crazy. You're driving your kids crazy. I mean, you're just pushing them. And again, you lie to yourself. In fact, you even lie to them. But so much about what you're trying to get your spouse to be or not be, so much of what you're trying to get your kids to be or not be, it's so much about you. And again, it's dangerous. Some of you, there are relatives that you just don't get along with. And the reason you don't get along with them, you're just jealous. You'll never look like that. You'll never drive that. You'll never live that. That way you'll never have that. You'll never be that happy. Your first marriage didn't go well. You don't get to have another first marriage. And they're still in their first marriage and they're doing fine. And after a while, you find yourself rejoicing over their failures, their small failures, and you know that's evil and you know it's embarrassing. But this thing, it's not just a casual thing. It's a dangerous thing. You know how far it can go? Two of the gospel writers tell us that when the Jewish leaders arrested Jesus and handed him over to Pilate, they both tell us, two of them tell us, that Pilate listened to the Jewish leaders and he realized, he even said, the reason they've handed Jesus over to me, they're jealous. They're envious. He has what they'll never have. He has the crowd. He has the crowd. He has the crowd. They want the crowd. And this envy thing, this jealousy thing, this comparison thing was so insidious, it drove them to actually hand over someone who was innocent in order to be crucified. Now, in a much less extreme way, we have the potential to hurt people and allow people to be hurt because of our tendency to compare where we are and where we aren't to the people around us. In fact, the wisest man who ever lived other than Jesus, Solomon, he said this. He said, envy, if you just let it go, envy ultimately rots the bones. Envy rots the bones. There's no win in comparison. Now, so here's the question we're going to ask, and here's what we're going to wrestle with for the next few weeks. What do we do? I mean, what do you do about that? I mean, your mind just goes there. You don't like it, it just goes there. How do you motivate your kids, or how do you motivate your husband or wife to improve? I mean, we got to improve. We got to work hard. We have to do our best. There's all of that. But how do we do that and not slip into this comparison trap where there's no win and we're constantly frustrated? And here's the amazing thing is I have wrestled with this and, tried to come to some conclusions in my own life. I open the scripture and I ask that question, and it's amazing to me. It's absolutely amazing. In fact, if you're not a Bible reader and you're still wrestling with is there a personal God, and you're really not sure about the whole Jesus thing, could I maybe just give you permission? Did you know it's okay not to be a Christian? Did you know it's okay not to believe the Bible and still read the Bible? You don't have to wait to believe it to read it. In fact, you don't read anything else because you believe it, right? You read it to see if you believe it, right? You do get the newspaper, right? Okay, so it's okay to read things you're not sure of. So here's what I want you to do. Today, we're going to look briefly at some things that Solomon said in the Old Testament. Then next week, in the third week, we're going to look into the New Testament. But what's amazing to me, you open the scriptures and you say, okay, is there any help in here about my habit of comparing myself to people around me? And boom. There it is. In fact, today we're going to look in the book of Ecclesiastes. Again, if you're not really a God person or a Jesus person or a Bible person, find a Bible and read the book of Ecclesiastes. And if you do, here's what will happen. You'll be reading it and you'll go, that's right. I didn't know that was in here. I think I heard that in a song. Yeah, It's amazing what's in Ecclesiastes. It's safe. There are no miracles, and it's before Jesus, okay? So it's a great place to start if you're skeptic. And it's packed full of wisdom. So Solomon, who did more than you'll ever do, okay? His wives were prettier than your wife will ever be, okay? Whatever you think you're going to do and accomplish, you're not going to keep up with Solomon. Solomon, the wisest man in the world, created one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was the wealthiest person in his lifetime. Kings and queens came and sat at his feet and asked for wisdom. Solomon looks at the world and he addresses this issue of our tendency to compare ourselves to other people. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, here's what he says. This is fascinating. And I saw that all toil, how much? All. I saw that all toil and all achievement spring from one person's envy of another. It's like, what? He goes, yep, I've been watching people. I'm a student of behavior. And I realized that for the most part, the thing that drives people is competition. The thing that drives people is they're looking over their left shoulder, their right shoulder. They're trying to figure out what everybody else is doing, where they're shopping, what they're wearing, what they're doing, how much they're making, what they're driving, where they're living. And it's all about, they're driven, their toil is driven by what they see people around them doing. Now, I read that and I thought, that was 3,000 years ago. I feel better about my issues, okay? This has been going on for a long time, 3,000 years ago. In fact, let me summarize his observation in this next statement. Here's what he said. He's saying is this. He saw people determining where they were based on where everybody else was. He saw people determining, am I okay? I'm okay. Am I okay? I'm not okay. Are my kids okay? My kids are okay. Is my wife okay? It's like, he said, I looked around, it looks like everybody is determining if they're okay based on what everybody else is doing. He said, this is just what I've observed. It's human nature. And this is his summary of that whole idea. This is amazing. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. So Solomon, what do you think about this whole thing of looking to my left and my right to determine how I'm doing? He'd say, it's meaningless. It's chasing after the wind. Now, Solomon, chasing after the wind, you can't really catch the wind. Exactly. There's no finish line. There's never a sense of satisfaction. There's never tranquility, and there's never any peace. To which, some of the men in the audience say, okay, so are you saying we're not supposed to do our best? Are you saying we're not supposed to try? Are you saying we're just supposed to fold our hands and just kind of sit back? Solomon's the wisest man in the world. So the next statement is this. Fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. Now, don't think for a minute I'm not telling you to be ambitious. I'm Solomon. Have you seen my temple? Okay? I'm Solomon. Have you seen my gardens? I'm Solomon. I got 300 and something wives and 600 and something concubines. I'm a busy guy. I've been around. I got a lot going on. I'm Solomon. I have more gold than Fort Knox. I'm Solomon. So I'm not saying you sit around and do nothing. You don't leverage your potential. You don't become the best you can be. I'm not saying that at all. Only a fool would fold their hands and do nothing. And the idea in this little verse is eventually, if you do nothing, you self-destruct. You hurt yourself. All right, Solomon, you got me. So what are you saying? And then this next verse. I'm telling you, if you've ever been inclined to memorize a verse of Scripture, this one is a great place to start or a next step. Because the whole idea of there's no win in comparison, here's his way of kind of fleshing that out. Here's what he said. This is so cool. Better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Better 1 handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls full of toil and chasing after the wind. And the Hebrew imagery here is very, very rich. Here's what this looks like. He says this, it's better to have one hand open. The implication being that God can put in it or take out of it whatever God chooses. It is better to have one hand open and to only have what one hand can hold than to have 2 fists clenched hanging on to everything you can get. It is better to have one hand open with tranquility. It is better to have one hand open and to learn to be content with whatever one hand can hold than to have 2 fists clenched around everything you can get. He said, because if you live like this, there will never be peace. There will never be tranquility. It is chasing after the wind. Because after you have tightened your fingers around all you can get, there's always something you can't get. And you're never at peace and there's never any tranquility. And Solomon, richest guy in his generation, says, I've been watching this. And here's what I've determined. 1 handful. Better is 1 handful with tranquility than 2 fistfuls of stuff that you can't ever be satisfied with. In fact, I'd like for us to just say this together. Would you read this with me? Better 1 handful with tranquility. One more time. Better 1 handful with tranquility. Those of you watching at home or online, I know it's kind of weird to talk to the computer, but I want you to say it with us. Ready? All together. Ready? Better 1 handful. Now, let me just tell you what. If you just let that thought settle in on you, if you just let that one thought, and as you begin to reach for more, as you begin to ignore your family because you have another deal, as you start to compare your daughter to, so-and-so's daughter, as you begin to try to motivate your son because you heard what somebody else's son is doing, as you begin to, bring up that issue with your wife again and you realize it's really my issue, not her issue, and you pause and you say, whoa. I'm doing this. There's no peace there. There's no tranquility there. This is chasing after the wind. Wisest guy in the world said, better is 1 hand with tranquility. Now, do you believe that? Do you believe that? You go, it's in the Bible. Of course I believe it. No, I'm talking about that. You, in your world, in your context, what if you got there? I think this is a game changer. I think this is when I begin to put on the brakes. I think this is when I start looking left. I go, there's no point in looking left. I think I'll look right. There's no point in looking right. Looking left and looking right, I'm just trying to get 2 handfuls. And then when I get both of my handfuls, I want a 3rd handful. Oh no, I only got 2 hands. God says, that's why. 1 handful. 1 hand. That's how you get tranquility in your life. Now, Solomon's wisest guy in the world doesn't stop there. Again I saw, he keeps going, gives us another visual. Again I saw something meaningless under the sun. This is so funny. It's like, welcome to my message today. I want to talk about some meaningless things. Get out your notebooks and let's talk about meaningless things. And yet somehow Solomon, wisest man in the world, makes even meaningless things interesting. So he says, let me tell you about yet another meaningless thing I saw. There was a man all alone. Now, we don't know if this is a category of people. We don't know if he actually had a friend this actually happened to. We don't know if this is a parable, but here he goes. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother, which meant in this culture and context, he had nobody to leave anything to. You couldn't leave stuff to your wives. You couldn't leave things to women. Women couldn't inherit anything 3,000 years ago. And so he says, there's a man, and he has no one to leave anything to. He's all alone. And yet, check this out, there was no end to his toil. Yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. He says, so here's this guy, I'm watching him, it's a friend of mine, or here's a category of people. They work and work and work and work and work and work and work, and they're never content. There's always more to do. There's always another goal. There's always something else to do. There's always something else to achieve. There's always something else to build. They just work and work and work and work and work, and they're never content. And then he says this guy, or this category of people, one day in the midst of all this toil, never being content, yet no one to leave anything to, he stops and he asks a very important question. Again, it's a question that our tendency is to answer quickly, but it's a question if we stop and say, really, really, really. Here's the question. For whom am I toiling? Why am I doing all this? Why do I live like this? Why am I constantly, left and right and left and wrong? What are they doing? Am I okay? Am I okay? Well, for whom am I toiling, he asks, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? Why is it I can't stop and enjoy what I've spent my entire life and leveraged everything for in order to get? Why is it, what is it in me that just gotta keep, just churn it out? And I get this stuff, or I get this family, and I'm not even really enjoying it. And he says, why am I doing this? Who am I really doing this for? What's driving me? And Solomon says, well, it's what I said at the beginning. Because it's human nature, unless you do something about it, it is human nature to take your cue from the person on the left and the right, and to be constantly comparing and competing. And then Solomon summarizes it this way. I love this. This too is meaningless. I love this. It's a miserable business. This too is meaningless. It's a miserable business. He says, as long as you're trying to always have two handfuls and realize, I wish I had a third hand, it doesn't matter what's in your hands. It doesn't matter what you accomplish. It doesn't matter how smart your kids are, how cute your wife is. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what your GPA is or what you made on the SAT. As long as your mindset is like this, it is a miserable business, and you will never be able to enjoy your life. Bottom line, there's no win. There's no win in comparison. There's no win in comparison. What if we learn? This is what I'm hoping we're going to do for the next few weeks. What if we learned to live like this? And what if we learned to catch ourselves when we started to do this with ourselves, in our academic pursuits, in our professional pursuits? What if we learned to live like this with our families? And what if we learned to catch ourselves right before we got two handfuls and then we're mad because we only had two hands? What if we learned to live, as we're going to talk about this in the third week especially, what if we could learn to live like this with God? Because here's the deal. The bottom line is, all of us are using something or someone as a mirror. All of us are looking somewhere to determine how we're doing really. And the bottom line, and the thing you got to determine is this, and you already have an answer to this question, okay? You may not know what it is, but we all have an answer to this question. The question is, what or who am I going to use as my reference point to tell me I'm okay? What or who am I going to use as a reference point to assure me that I'm okay, or to tell me that I'm doing all right? And do you know what I've learned? I mean, this is so funny to me. The older I get, it just seems like you should move past this. I've met older people who are super successful, younger people who are super successful, older people with great families, younger people with great families, and no matter how old or how young or how great or how not great, there's something in all of us that's looking somewhere for something or someone to tell us, you're okay. You're okay. You're right where you need to be. You're doing exactly what you ought to do. You're okay. You don't need to do any more. You don't need to do any less. You're fine. So the question I want to leave us with is this one. Where are you looking? Is Is it your dad, Is it family? Is it dollars? Is it your boss? Is it your industry that you're in? Is it how you look? Is it how well your kids do? Is it how well your husband does? I mean, what's your mirror? What or who are you looking to feel like, I'm okay? And Solomon says, if you look to somebody to your left or somebody to your right, if you're not careful, you're going to be like this, and you're never going to feel like you're okay no matter what you achieve, what your family achieves, what your kids achieve, what he looks like, what she looks like, what you drive, or where you win. Solomon, who had it all, said, I'm just telling you, I've been there, done that. It's chasing after the wind. But before I let you out of here, I want to make sure that you're as stirred up as you can possibly be. So I just want to ask you a few questions real quick, okay? And these are my make you mad questions, okay? These are my I wish he hadn't said that questions. These are I wish he'd let us out 4 minutes early questions. But here's the thing. I'm telling you, I'm so good at self-deception. Okay, I'm the pastor. I'm really good at self-deception because I already know the chapters and the verses, okay? So I'm really good. And so I just want all of us to leave here facing the fact, you know what? I do this. And I may be driving people crazy. And no, Andy, I got to be honest. When you said one handful with tranquility, that bothered me. When you said one handful with tranquility, I thought, that's not enough. Andy, when you said one handful with tranquility, I thought, loser. When you said one handful with tranquility, I thought, who needs tranquility? When you said one handful with tranquility, I thought, I would never have tranquility if I just had one hand full. Then you need to listen because you may learn something. And here's what I don't want you to miss, okay? I'm not talking about being less productive, okay? We've heard from Solomon, he did all right. Then we're going to hear from Jesus. I don't think anybody's going to be talking about you in 2,000 years. I hate to tell you, okay? So we're not talking about not being productive, and Jesus got it all done in 3 years. What have you been doing? Okay, some of you are going to work 40 years and get a watch. Okay? He pulled it off in 3 years. And you know what Jesus said over and over? This is amazing to me. Over and over, you say, Jesus, what are you doing? The will of my Father. Jesus, what are you doing? The will of my Father. Jesus, you know what they said? You know what they said? What are you going to do? The will of my Father. Do you think you're going to get anything done just doing the will of your Father? Well, we'll see. We'll see. All right, so here's your questions. Are you exhausted from trying to keep up with fill in the blank? Are you exhausted? Are you tired? Come on, let's be honest. Is there something in you that's like, I wish I just didn't even know what they had. I just wish I didn't even know where they were going on vacation. Because in our culture, see, here's the deal. If you lived on a farm and it was you and your spouse and your 3 kids, and once a month you went into town for supplies and there was no internet, you'd be so content. Because it's awareness that drives our discontentment. But our discontent. But awareness isn't going away. So let me ask you something. Are you exhausted? Is there something in you that you're kind of tired for trying to keep up? Second question. Are you broke from trying to keep up with fill in the blank? Is this part of your financial issue? I mean, you blame it on debt, you blame it on the economy, and you lost your job, and you went for it. There's all that stuff, and that's real. But maybe at the root of all this, maybe behind all this, maybe before those financial problems surfaced, there was something in you, and just for the sake of keeping up with, I don't know who it is. Now you have, or it's contributed to your financial problems. That's all I'm asking, could that be part of the issue? Are you allowing what others have to keep you from enjoying what you have? Are you allowing what others have to keep you from enjoying what you have? Because you have 8.5-foot ceilings and they have 10.5-foot ceilings, now you hate your house. It's like every time you walk in your house, you feel like you have to duck. And now you don't enjoy your house. And do you know why you don't enjoy your house? Your house was the same, okay? Well, you have 10-foot and they have 12-foot, right? You have 3.5, 4.5, bedrooms. They got 6.5. Their basements, and it just goes on and on and on. Are you allowing what others have to keep you from enjoying what you have? You know what that is? That's chasing after the wind. Because even if you got what they have, guess what? There's somebody else with a bigger and somebody out there has an est. And you're just chasing the wind, and I'm chasing the wind. Are you allowing what others have to keep you from enjoying what God has allowed you to manage and to own in this life are you allowing what you don't have to keep you from enjoying what you do have? How about this one? Do you enjoy your kids, or are you driving them crazy because of what everybody else's kids are accomplishing? Do you enjoy your children? Or are you just pushing because you're so aware of what they could do, and there's other stuff out, and there's another scholarship, and you hear about so-and-so's going to such and such. I mean, can you just take a deep breath and enjoy your children? Do you know there are couples who would love to have had your child, your son, your daughter, and they can't? It's like, and think about that. You should think about that. Because the issue isn't your child. The issue isn't their SAT score. The issue isn't which school they got into. The issue isn't are they in the A group, the B group, or the C group. The issue is they're your child. Can you enjoy them? Or are you just going to drive them crazy because of what somebody might think about you as a parent? See how dangerous this is? And some of you know this because that's the kind of family you grew up in. You are so disconnected from your parents as an adult because they drove you. You wonder if they ever even loved you. And you go, well, I know they loved me, but did I feel it? No, I just felt like it was all about performance. And so perhaps your inclination will be to repeat that very kind of parenting style. I don't know. Can you enjoy your kids? Is it possible that your husband or wife feels like you're dissatisfied with them because of your propensity to compare them to other husbands and wives? Now, you're smart. Okay, you don't say, honey, so-and-so, you don't do that, okay? Because you tried that once, and, that doesn't motivate anybody. Oh, well, since he makes more money, that makes me want to thank you. I didn't realize, that doesn't work, I noticed she is a lot thinner. Honey, I'm going to get on that. Thank you for pointing that out, I mean, that doesn't go anywhere, right? But if in your mind, come on, if in your mind you're constantly playing these tapes, I wish he had, I wish she had, I wish she looked like, I wish he worked. If it's a constant, every time you look at him, every time you look at her, it's in comparison. Do you realize you're undermining what you have at one point said is the most important thing in the world to you, which is your marriage? Do you see how dangerous this is? Do you think we can get off this treadmill? Wouldn't it be amazing to get to the place where I'm saying, you know what? It's better. This is better. This is better. And this is where I'm going to live. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, thank you for preserving these texts for 3,000 years. It's been sitting in our basements and, in closets, and it's got dust all over it, and some of it sits on a coffee table, and a bunch of us have a bunch of them on shelves, and there it sits. Now, Heavenly Father, there's probably not a single person here or watching on television or at home or online who would not push a button and somehow magically be transformed to the place where there was tranquility with what we've accomplished, who we are. So, Father, would you please help us wean ourselves off the mirror of what everybody else is doing and what everybody else's kids are doing and what everybody else around us is doing, and bring us to that amazing, amazing place of peace and tranquility where we're no longer chasing the wind, where we can actually love, where we can actually celebrate, where we can actually mourn. And Father, I don't know what that's going to look for each one of us, but it's a process. It's not a simple decision. So in these next few weeks, would you help us renew our minds to think like you think, and ultimately to see ourselves the way you see us, and to learn to be content with that. And Father, I have a feeling we'll be more productive. We'll be stronger in our homes. We'll be stronger in our relationships. But bring us to that place where we are content with one hand, with tranquility, that none of us would spend another ounce of energy chasing the wind. In Jesus' name I pray these things. Amen.